It's definitely been a little while since I uploaded something to this channel. Welcome back to the Mid-State. We'll be checking out some trains throughout January of 2025 through January of 2026. We'll be checking out the CS6 Saginaw Sub. We'll be checking out Norfolk Southern's Detroit Line, Detroit District. And we'll be checking out some CP trains. And we'll also be checking out some CN stuff on the CN Shoreline. So let's get started here at Erie, Michigan. This would be the last M209 that I would be seeing around Michigan. The last M209 that I would be seeing would have CSX 1982, the Seaboard system heritage locomotive. It would be leading on a southbound M209 for Louisville, Kentucky. CSX has decided to reassemble M209 from Woolwich all the way down to Baldwin, Florida, which would take the northern part of the Toledo Sub. In June of 2025, CSX has decided to reinstate the M209 and abolish it, with 141 taking 209 to Arwax down to Louisville. And then once it gets to Baltimore, it'll work to Baltimore Yard, take some interval down to Louisville, Kentucky. So that recently has changed in June. And as I'm making this video, there is an M209 now. It's basically a Louisville, Kentucky to Jacksonville, Florida as of July of 2025. A few days later, we'll be back out to the tracks again. This time we'll be catching a CN train. No more CSX trains for a little bit. As for this time, we'll be catching a CN train. This is M382 coming from Toledo, Ohio to Toronto, Ontario, with a CN SD75i Duo leading away during backlit conditions. the M382 usually goes on duty at 7 a.m. sharp, but it kind of depends when the crew gets there. Sometimes they can come later for 382. So it just kind of depends what the crew feels like. Most of the times they go on duty at 7, so they would go by us at 8:30. This time it didn't go by us till 1:30 p.m. Our next train that we'll be catching would be a short clip of M209 by Salle. It would have a flared mag leading. And then this time, we'll be shooting the whole train by cone. It would be CPKC 230 with the Olympics Special Interest Unit. CPKC 230 is a manifest train that comes from Vancouver, Illinois to Toronto, Ontario. It's usually a daily manifest train that will come to Michigan and daily. With the CP Olympics unit, CP 8876 would be leading the way on CP 230. It would have a KCS SC70 Ace as a mid-train DPO on. Alright, we're in March now, and we are past daylight savings, so it doesn't get dark till 8 p.m. The Ann Arbor Railroad was heading northbound out of Toledo for the Interchange in Ann Arbor. We'll be catching the turn heading northbound out of Toledo. We'll be traveling on the ex-Ann Arbor trackage, and it still is the Ann Arbor trackage as of 2026. The Ann Arbor train would be leaving Toledo as of 7:10 p.m. They will get held up at the Alexis Diamond, and then they'll get a clear signal to head north. One of the units that is leading has a ex-Contrail R3L horn attached to it. A week later, after shooting the Ann Arbor Railroad, we're back in Romulus, Michigan, shooting a M224 coming from Detroit, Michigan to Cumberland, Maryland. This will be a shorty 224 after coming from Detroit. The Y2 was the only unit that was available after the 2 units that were at Rougemere that was taken onto L302. We're in late April now, April 30th, 2025. I would be at Delray Junction at the Dearborn Street. We'll be shooting some trains at Delray Junction for at least a couple hours before we would head over to the Ford Field in Detroit, Michigan to go to a concert. This is CN E251 from Flat Rock to Battle Creek, Michigan. We'll be checking out Delray Junction in Detroit, Michigan for a while. After being here within 15 minutes, we hear an EMD rumble. Same thing with a GE rumble. That will be E251's train for Flat Rock. However, we are going to be spending here at Delray Junction for a while, so enjoy the catches that we caught here. This is a Windsor local train that comes from Windsor to Detroit, Michigan for the Oakwood Yard in Detroit. After getting CPH97 from Windsor to Oakwood Yard and heading back to Windsor, he'll be clearing up the switch. After a few minutes later, we would get some crossing gates going down, and we heard a whistle from the east. This is a CSX local coming from the east, heading back to Rougemere Yard in Detroit. CN S756 is an as-needed sand train heading from Ohio from the Interchange somewhere out west to his final destination. This is an as-needed sand train that will run on the Shoreline. On May 6, 2025, I'll be shooting some trains around the downriver area at Wyandotte, Michigan. We'll be shooting trains on the CN Shoreline and the Flatlock Sub. These two trains that we will be shooting will be on the Shoreline. This is our first train. It will be CN L507. L507 comes from Flatlock to Flint, Michigan. He would have a couple ST-70Ms leading the way northbound. There wasn't a whole lot of manifest, there was a lot of ROX. Mainly because L507 works Ferndale and Pontiac along his destination. 507 usually has a lot of manifest and sometimes he's short. But today, his train was mostly ROX and there was some manifest at the head end. This will be our next train on the Shoreline. It's CN Q116. We'll be coming from Homewood, Illinois to Flatlock, Michigan. From Homewood to Ferndale, he'll have intermodal at the front end and ROX at the back. Mainly because Ferndale has an intermodal terminal, so they mainly drop all of their intermodal cut. This is because they don't want to bring any intermodal down to Flat Rock, even though they have done that before. They always drop the intermodal in Ferndale, and they will continue southbound for Flat Rock with all Ardoacs. This is our next train here. It will be on the CN Flat Rock sub with CN 5317 in the lead. It's CN L573. He'll be heading northbound from Flat Rock, Michigan. After getting CN L573 on the Flat Rock sub, I decided to take some time off and not Railfan in the mid-state for a while. On May 22nd, 2025, me and a group of friends have decided to meet up at a railfanning spot north of New Boston. It is called Romulus, Michigan. This is a spot where it has the CSX Saginaw sub and the NS Wabash line as Detroit District. This is CP 529, about to run over the diamonds here in Romulus, with a CPKC leader, Tier 4 locomotive leading the way on CP 529. As you can tell, it would have a UP AC6000 rebuild, trailing 2 out of 4, and then a KCS 3 out of 4, and then a normal CP AC44 CW trailing 4 out of 4. Heading to Cedar Rapids, Iowa. 529 has cleared Romulus, we would get another train, but we would have to wait another 20 minutes before the gates start to deactivate. And here comes B71 coming from Milan to Detroit, Michigan, Oakwood Yard. But then after B71 works Oakwood, he would go back to Milan with loads of garbage containers for Milan. After B71, it'll be a while till we go back out to the tracks in the mid-state. June 5th, 2025. I'm back out to the tracks in mid-state. We'll be catching some trains around the Erie, Michigan, as this is the only train that we would get on this day. This is NSB 46 coming from Swan, Ohio to Monroe, Michigan, and back to Swan. They normally come out of Swan during the day, sometimes at night, depending which is available for crew-wise. D46 and B51 are the BNSF coal trains that come from Swan to Monroe. But the only time I would catch the BNSF coal trains are B46, and this is a B46 heading northbound on the Detroit line heading for Monroe. A week and a half has passed, and we're back out to the tracks, shooting some more trains in Michigan. On June 15, 2025, me and my father have decided to go out to the tracks in Cone, Michigan to shoot a CP train that one eastbound on the Wabash line. This one is CP230. It'll come from Bentonville, Illinois to Toronto, Ontario with 4 brand new CPKC Tier 4 locomotives. 3 of them would be up front, and then the last one would be as a mid-train DPU. On June 19th, 2025, I'll be back out to the tracks, and this time we'll be shooting a CN southbound on the CN Shoreline over in Salle. We'll be chasing it to Toledo, Ohio, where their final destination. CN M383 will come from Toronto, Ontario to Toledo, Ohio. The heritage locomotive would be CN 3008. The Illinois Central, leading southbound for Toledo, Ohio. It has a different horn on it this time. As for this time, it'll have a K5 HLB horn. After shooting CN M383 at the South Otter Creek crossing in Salle, we'll be heading over to Low Test Crossing, north of the Michigan and Ohio border. We'll be shooting the train here, and this will be the final time that we would see the Illinois Central Heritage before it would go back north the following day, which I was unable to get. So this was the only time that we would be able to get the Illinois Central Heritage on this day. After shooting 383 by this crossing here, it'll be a while till we get another train in Michigan. On July 22nd, 2025, I'll be shooting some more trains again in Michigan. This time, we'll be shooting this only train on this day. The Ann Arbor Railroad was heading northbound, and I thought I would get this backlit shot of the Ann Arbor Railroad heading north. That was it on that day, but the next day, on July 23rd, 2025, me and a couple friends would go down to Salle to shoot NS11N, shooting the train on La Pleasance Road in LaSalle, Michigan. After shooting the Pennsylvania Heritage locomotive on the 11N on the Detroit line, we're back onto the Detroit district. This one is going to be an NS-172. 172 is a Danville, Kentucky to Detroit, Michigan. He's a daily manifest ROX way for Detroit, Michigan. 172 is mostly manifest, but sometimes he is fully ROX. He is a short one today going for Detroit, Michigan. 172 would have the New York Central Heritage Locomotive leading. 1066 would be leading on a 172 the day before, and now he's coming up to Michigan. Full speed ahead for Detroit, Michigan. After 30 minutes have passed, we're in Adrian, Michigan. We'll be shooting CP-106. We'll be shooting it while it's crossing the diamond on the NS Wabash or Detroit District. We'll be waiting for Adrian Blissfield to head east for Blissfield, Michigan, but that'll be in a separate video. I do have a plan to upload a Adrian Blissfield video at some point, so stay tuned for that. Meanwhile, we'll be focusing on CP-106. It's heading for Toronto, Ontario, with a fresh CPKC Tier 4 locomotive leading on 106. It will have a KCS AC-44 as a mid-train DPU. After shooting CP-106 in Adrian, Michigan, it'll be another couple days before we're back onto the tracks. We're back in Cone, Michigan. This time we're catching a NS-172 with a colorful Lashup. You guys will see in a sec. What you guys just saw was an NS-172. 172 is a Danville, Kentucky for Detroit, Michigan. It'll be heading towards Oakwood Yard in Melvindale, Michigan. What you guys just saw was a colorful Lashup. The leader was NS-4001, DCAC blue/gray bonnet, and then an RJ Corman SD40-2, back to back. As I was heard about this Lashup coming from Cincinnati, Ohio, I figured I would wake up super early in the morning, around 6:30, to get something done in the morning, but then come over to Cone. I didn't have anything else to do since it was my day off, and figured to shoot this 172. This will be the 28th of August of 2025, and we'll be back out to the tracks over in Salle on the Pleasant Road crossing. We'll be shooting NS11N by the NS Bridge here in Salle. If you can tell what locomotive this is, keep listening and take a look. Yup, this is NS 4001 leading on 11N, heading for Sterling Heights, Michigan. So, the 27th of August, I found out NS 11N would have NS 4001 solo leading, heading for Sterling Heights, Michigan. So, I figured the 28th of August, I would go out to see 4001. However, 11N had to work Toledo for a couple hours. So that made us getting the train during blue hour. But I got this shot of 11N passing us over in Salle on La Pleasant Road crossing. After catching NS 4001, we head back home and chill out for the rest of the night. The next day would be something different. Next day, August 30th, 2025, I'll be back out to the CSX Saginaw Subdivision to be catching a CSX train. This one is an intermodal CSX I-150. CSX I-150 comes from North Baltimore, Ohio, for Detroit, Michigan. He'll have a BNSF 25th anniversary leading, and then an H2-9, and then a CSX Tier 4 GEVO, filling 3 out of 3, but the 25th anniversary unit is leading I-150. a whopping 2 months before we would catch our next train. This is a train on the CSX Saginaw Subdivision. As you can see by the leader, this one is CSX 1871, the Atlantic Coastline Heritage Locomotive. It would end up leading on a M511 coming from Detroit, Michigan to Cincinnati, Ohio. The daily manifest train that comes out in the early morning, but today he would be coming southbound at around 12:30 because he would be sitting over by Salle for a couple hours. Maybe because they weren't ready for 511 to get into Waldwood, so that's probably the main reason why. Mainly, it's probably because they had a good crew and something was up with the coupler on the lead unit. So, I don't know what's going on with that. So, 511's heading southbound now. This would be the only train that we would catch in this day. Will be during the evening of November 23rd, 2025. I'll be back out to shoot some more trains on the Norfolk Southern's Detroit line and Canadian National's Shoreline. That comes from Toledo, Ohio to Detroit, Michigan, and then it'll turn into the Clement sub. The Norfolk Southern Detroit line will go all the way up to Sterling Heights, will be turning to Conwell. So, basically, the NS Detroit line will go all the way up to Riverview until it gets to Conwell. Now, this train right here, heading for Monroe, Michigan, coming from Swan, Ohio, will have one of Montana Whaling's SD70s trailing 2 out of 2 on this coal train from Monroe. Usually, all the Monroe coal trains usually come from the east and south, but a lot of them come from the BNSF Interchange. The reason that, because BNSF has decided to run a lot of these coal trains for Monroe. Usually, there's really not a whole lot of Norfolk Southern coal trains that go from the east and south to Monroe. Mostly all the coal trains that come from Norfolk Southern basically come from the east, from Shire Oak, Pennsylvania. So I don't know why they don't do a whole lot of coal trains for Monroe these days, but I will say, when BNSF won these coal trains out to Monroe, they're usually pretty good power on them too. The one time that I caught a Monroe coal train, it had a pretty good Lashup on it. A few days after Memorial Weekend, we got word about a NS 880 heading from the BNSF Interchange, heading to Swan, Ohio first before it would head over to Monroe. He would have a pretty good Lashup. He would have a BNSF 25th anniversary leading with a SD70 Montana Oil Link trailing. So they were back to back together. They were supposed to come to Monroe, but for some other reason, they had to go to Sandusky first before they come to Monroe. The day after they went to Sandusky, they headed westbound on the NS Chicago line, and I went down to Millbury to shoot it before I would chase it up to Michigan. So, that was in a separate video you guys probably already saw. Let's jump back into the action here. This is CNL 506 coming from Toledo, Ohio to Flat Rock, Michigan. It's a daily local train that comes from Lang to Flat Rock Yard. Usually they run at night, but sometimes they run during the day. After catching 506, we saw a headlight coming from the south. We knew what train this was. This was NS 254 coming from Sandusky, Ohio to Detroit, Michigan. The SD70 that was leading it would have a pretty good horn on it. January 17th, 2026. I'll be shooting a NS-17E heading for Sterling Heights, Michigan. We'll be meeting up with some friends over in Wyandotte, Michigan for this train. I missed the train over in LaSalle within 8 minutes, so I made some personal phone calls and I'm now here in Wyandotte, Michigan. We made it here within 30 minutes before the train passed. I got set up within 5 minutes before the train showed up. Here it is, passing some Trilights on the Norfolk Southern Detroit line. As you can probably tell, 17E had some intermodal at the front end of their train, so they're probably going to drop them off over in Riverview. But they could also drop it off over in Detroit, so it just kind of depends. They might drop it off in Detroit. It might be easier since the intermodal facility is over in Detroit, and they're heading up to Sterling Heights, so they may as well drop it off in Detroit. After shooting at a 17E over in Wyandotte, I decided to end the night here since it was 17 degrees out. Plus, there wouldn't be any more action for my time being here in Wyandotte. So, I would say my final goodbyes to my friends here in Wyandotte and I would head home. So, this is where I'm ending the video at. Thank you so much for watching this hour-long video. And I'll see you guys next time in the Mitten or Buckeye State.